a creature the size of a school bus, covered in scales, staring you down with cold, ancient eyes. Now imagine shrinking that world down to the tip of your finger, where a tiny lizard no bigger than your thumbnail clings to a leaf, blinking at you like you're the strange one. Welcome to the most extreme ends of reptile evolution, where nature went absolutely wild, both in scale and in miniaturization. Today, we're ranking the 5 biggest reptiles that ever walked, swam, or crawled across this earth. Creatures so massive, they make today's largest animals look like toys. And then we're flipping the script completely to reveal the 5 smallest living lizards on the planet right now. Animals so impossibly tiny that science almost missed them entirely. From sea monsters longer than a city bus to lizards you could lose inside a matchbox. This is a journey through 300 million years of reptile evolution. And trust me, both ends of this list will absolutely blow your mind. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 5 on our extinct giants list is Mosasaurus. Now, this thing wasn't walking on land. It was dominating the oceans during the late Cretaceous period, roughly 66 to 82 million years ago, and it did so with terrifying efficiency. Mosasaurus was a true sea monster, stretching anywhere from 40 to 56 feet in length. That's roughly 12 to 17 meters, and weighing an estimated 15 tons or more. It was first discovered in 1764 when workers inside a limestone quarry in Maastricht, Netherlands, pulled out a massive fossilized skull that nobody could identify. Scientists at the time were completely baffled. It wasn't until the late 1700s and early 1800s that naturalists pieced together what this creature actually was. Mosasaurus wasn't a dinosaur. It was more closely related to modern monitor lizards and snakes, making it a true reptile in every sense. It had a long, powerful tail that it used to propel itself through ancient seas, double-hinged jaws packed with conical teeth, and even a forked tongue like today's lizards. It swam across what is now North America, Europe, and as far as Antarctica. The oceans it ruled were warm, shallow, and absolutely full of prey. Fish, ammonites, sea turtles, and Mosasaurus ate all of it. When the asteroid hit 66 million years ago, Mosasaurus went with the dinosaurs. But for millions of years, it was the undisputed king of the Cretaceous seas. At number 4, we step onto land and meet Sarcosuchus imperator. And yes, that name means flesh crocodile emperor, and it absolutely earned that title. This colossal creature lived approximately 112 million years ago during the early Cretaceous period, and it roamed the river systems and swamps of what is now the Sahara Desert in Africa, though back then that region was a lush tropical floodplain. Sarcosuchus was discovered through fossil fragments over several decades, but it wasn't until 2000 and 2001 that paleontologist Paul Sereno and his team unearthed multiple, nearly complete skeletons in Niger, finally giving the world a true picture of just how enormous this animal was. And enormous it was, stretching up to 40 feet long, or about 12 meters, and weighing an estimated 8 to 10 metric tons. Its skull alone was nearly 6 feet long. For scale, a modern saltwater crocodile, the largest living reptile today, maxes out at around 20 feet and 1 ton. Sarcosuchus was essentially twice the length and nearly 10 times the weight. It had broad, powerful jaws lined with around 132 teeth and a distinctive bulla, a rounded, upturned tip at the end of its snout, which scientists believe may have enhanced its sense of smell. It likely preyed on large fish and even dinosaurs that dared to drink from its rivers. This was not just a big crocodile. This was the apex predator of its entire ecosystem. Number 3 brings us to one of the most impressive marine predators that has ever existed, Shastasaurus. Now, unlike the terrifying hunters we've met so far, Shastasaurus surprises you because despite being one of the largest marine reptiles ever discovered, it may have been a gentle giant. Shastasaurus was an ichthyosaur, a group of dolphin-shaped marine reptiles that ruled the seas long before the dinosaurs even hit their peak. It lived during the late Triassic period, approximately 210 to 235 million years ago, and its fossils have been found across North America, particularly in Shasta County, California, which gave it its name, as well as in British Columbia, Canada, and even in China. Discovered first in the late 19th century and described more fully through the 20th century, the largest species, Shastasaurus sicaniensis, was formally described in 2004 from fossils found in British Columbia. And the size? Truly staggering. Estimated at 69 feet long, or roughly 21 meters. That makes it potentially the largest marine reptile ever found. Yet, despite this immense size, its skull was relatively small and its jaws were largely toothless, suggesting it may have fed by suction, slurping up soft-bodied prey like squid in a manner similar to modern sperm whales. It was enormous, ancient, and possibly surprisingly peaceful, a 70-foot vacuum cleaner cruising through Triassic seas.
At number 2, we're back on land, and this time, the creature we're meeting once held the record as the largest terrestrial lizard to ever live. Meet Megalania, scientifically known as Varanus priscus. And if you think Komodo dragons are scary, Megalania was their nightmare fuel. This gigantic monitor lizard stalked the ancient continent of Australia during the Pleistocene epoch, roughly 50,000 to 2 million years ago, which means it actually overlapped with early humans. Our ancestors may have genuinely encountered this thing. Fossils of Megalania have been found across eastern and southern Australia, first described by the great paleontologist Richard Owen in 1859. Estimating its full size has been difficult because complete skeletons are rare, but based on the best fossil evidence, scientists believe Megalania reached lengths of 15 to 20 feet, around 4.5 to 6 meters, and potentially weighed anywhere from 300 to over 600 kilograms, depending on the estimate. Like its living relative, the Komodo dragon, Megalania likely had venomous saliva or venom glands, making it doubly dangerous. It would have preyed on the megafauna of prehistoric Australia: giant wombats, massive kangaroos, enormous tortoises. It was the apex predator of an entire continent, and it went extinct relatively recently, possibly due to a combination of climate change and human hunting pressure. Just think about that. This monster walked the same land that people walk today. And finally, the number 1 biggest extinct reptile, the absolute titan of them all, is Argentinosaurus. Wait, I know what you're thinking. Argentinosaurus is a dinosaur, not a reptile. But here's the thing. Dinosaurs are reptiles. They belong to the reptile family tree. And Argentinosaurus, a sauropod dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period, approximately 94 to 97 million years ago, was the largest land animal and one of the largest reptiles that ever existed on this planet. Its fossils were discovered in Neuquén Province in Patagonia, Argentina, in 1987 by a rancher named Guillermo Heredia, who initially thought the massive bones were pieces of petrified wood. When paleontologist Jose Bonaparte examined them, the scientific world was stunned. A single vertebra from Argentinosaurus was over 5 feet tall. Its estimated total length reached 30 to 40 meters. That's up to 130 feet. Its estimated weight ranged from 70 to 100 metric tons, though some estimates push higher. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than a dozen African elephants. Its legs alone were the size of tree trunks. Every step it took would have shaken the earth. Argentinosaurus fed entirely on vegetation. It had to, consuming hundreds of pounds of plant matter every single day just to sustain its body. It moved slowly. It lived in what is now South America when that continent was a different world entirely. And it represents the absolute upper limit of how large a land animal can physically grow. Nothing on land has ever come close before or since. Number 1, by an absolute mile. Now we flip the entire script, from world-ending giants to creatures you could lose between your fingers. Let's count down the 5 smallest living lizards on Earth today, starting from number 5 and working our way to something almost unbelievably small. At number 5, we have the pygmy chameleon, specifically the Rampholian species group. found across the forests of East and Central Africa, particularly in countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi, and Mozambique. These are not the big, colorful chameleons you see in pet stores. These are tiny, leaf litter-dwelling miniatures of their famous relatives. The smallest among them, such as Rampholian bolingeri, measure only about 3 to 5 centimeters in total length, roughly the size of your thumb. They were described and studied through the 19th and 20th centuries by European naturalists cataloging African biodiversity. Unlike larger chameleons, pygmy chameleons can't dramatically shift their colors. They mostly stay brown and mottled, perfectly matching dead leaves on the forest floor. They don't have the prehensile tail for gripping branches that larger chameleons have. Instead, they walk on the ground, hunting tiny insects and staying out of sight. They're secretive, remarkably well camouflaged, and because they live in the leaf litter rather than the canopy, many species were only formally described in recent decades as scientists explored remote forest habitats more thoroughly.
Coming in at number 4 is the short-nosed earless dragon, Tympanocryptus parviceps, a tiny lizard found in the arid grasslands and spinifex plains of central and southern Australia. This little creature typically measures between 5 and 8 centimeters in total length, and it's one of those animals that most Australians have never seen, despite it living right under their feet. Described formally in the late 20th century during broader surveys of Australian reptile diversity, the short-nosed earless dragon is, as the name suggests, earless on the outside, with no visible ear opening, which is unusual even among small lizards. It lives a ground-hugging life in open, sparsely vegetated terrain, feeding on tiny insects and other invertebrates. Because of its small size and its tendency to remain motionless when threatened, relying on camouflage rather than speed, it's extremely difficult to spot. Australia has extraordinary reptile diversity, with over 900 lizard species, and many of its smallest species like this one are still being discovered and described as remote regions are surveyed.
Number 3 on our tiny lizard list is the Virgin Islands dwarf gecko, Spherodactylus parthenopion. And this one is remarkable because for a long time, it held the title of the world's smallest known lizard. Found only on the tiny island of Virgin Gorda in the British Virgin Islands, this gecko was first formally described in 1965. It inhabits the moist leaf litter beneath rocks and decaying vegetation in very specific microhabitats on the island. The total adult length of this gecko is roughly 18 to 36 millimeters, barely over an inch in some individuals. That's the size of a large coin. Despite its minuscule size, it's a fully functioning, complex vertebrate. It hunts tiny mites and springtails, reproduces, and navigates its miniature world with complete behavioral sophistication. Because it's endemic to such a tiny, specific island, it's considered a vulnerable species. Its entire global population lives in one very small place, making habitat preservation absolutely critical to its survival.
At number 2, we have another gecko, the Jaragua dwarf gecko, scientifically Spherodactylus ariasi, and this one is extraordinary. Found in the Jaragua National Park in the southwestern Dominican Republic, as well as on the small nearby island of Beata, this gecko was discovered and formally described as recently as 2001 by researchers S. Blair Hedges and Richard Thomas. And when they found it, it immediately challenged the Virgin Islands gecko for the title of world's smallest reptile. Adults of this species measure between 16 and 18 millimeters from snout to vent, not even counting the tail, making the total length barely over an inch. It lives among the leaf litter in a dry, rocky, limestone-dominated habitat within the national park. Like its equally tiny Caribbean cousin, it feeds on microinvertebrates that other predators couldn't even bother with. The fact that this species was only formally described in 2001 tells you something fascinating. Even in the 21st century, on a well-studied Caribbean island, scientists are still finding entirely new vertebrate species hiding in plain sight. Nature still has secrets.
And finally, number 1, the absolute smallest living lizard on Earth today, and arguably one of the most astonishing discoveries in modern herpetology. Meet Brookesia nana, the nano chameleon, found in the rainforests of northern Madagascar. This species was only formally described to science in February 2021, and the moment it was announced, it captivated the entire world. The male specimen that was used for the formal description measured just 13.5 millimeters from snout to vent, making it not just the smallest chameleon, not just the smallest lizard, but potentially the smallest amniote, the smallest reptile or mammal on the entire planet. A fully grown adult male Brookesia nana can sit comfortably on your fingertip with room to spare. It was discovered in a highly degraded rainforest habitat in the Cerrado Massif in northern Madagascar, a region that has already lost much of its original forest cover to agricultural clearing. Researchers Frank Glaw and colleagues formally described the species and immediately flagged conservation concerns, because this tiny chameleon's entire known range is a small and threatened patch of forest. Despite being only millimeters long, the male has fully developed, proportionally large reproductive organs, a detail that surprised scientists and suggested that even at nanoscale, natural selection operates with remarkable precision. Madagascar is already known as one of the world's greatest biodiversity hotspots, but Brookesia nana proved that even in the most well-studied groups of animals, in one of the most studied countries for reptiles, nature still had a record breaker hiding in the leaves, invisible to the world until just a few years ago.